Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Blackboard. I am your teacher, Hanif Faus, and today we will be looking at identifying root letters. This is our Level 1A, Unit 1, Video Lesson A. A big part of the Accessible Arabic program is not simply teaching you how words are structured grammatically or syntactically in sentences, but also looking at how words themselves are derived. A big part of studying Arabic is learning what's referred to as a sarf or morphology, which is how words are structured and how they change from their verbal roots. And so in this first lesson, we'll be looking at the concept of root letters. When we think about words in Arabic, words in general come from three-letter root verbs or trilateral verbs. By trilateral, we mean that they have three letters. These three letters carry a meaning, and that meaning is shared through other words that are derived from that three-letter root. And so look at the examples that appear here on the board. حافظ, محفظة, حفيظ, and محفوظ. Do you see anything that all of these words have in common? If you notice that they all had the three root letters, ha, fa, and dha, if you notice that they shared those three letters, then you're absolutely positively correct. Let's bring up our trusty pen and see if we can do some searching here. So we have ha, fa, dha. Ha, fa, dha. Ha, fa, dha. Ha, fa, dha. So we have four words. All of these words look individually different, but they all share the same root verbs or root letters, which is hafidha. The word hafidha is a pretty common word in Arabic. If any of you know someone who has memorized the Quran, the term for someone who has memorized the Quran is a hafiz of the Quran. And so hafidha means to memorize. It can also mean to protect. And so the idea of protection and preserving and keeping can be found in each of these derivatives. So for example, our word on the right here, hafiz, means a memorizer, a preserver, a keeper, a protector. The word mahfuz means protected. The word mihfadha is a wallet where you protect your money and other important monetary instruments. That's the word we're looking for, instruments. And hafiz is protective. Someone who is protective or protecting is hafiz. And so the point is that, again, from the three-letter root hafidha, we have four other words. And that's important, and that's what makes the study of morphology very, very important in the study of Arabic. Because what happens is once you understand that words are related to verbs, and that these verbs carry meaning, and that meaning is then distributed or diffused into these various derivatives, then you realize that you probably know a few more words than you think you do, because you begin to see and look for the root verb. And if you understand the root verb's meaning, then you can usually figure out other words that are derived from that. I'll give you an example. Fataha. Fataha means to open. To open, it can also mean like to open enemy lines and to give victory. Allah says in the Quran, إِذَا جَاءَ نَصْرُ اللَّهِ وَالْفَتْحِ. When the help of Allah comes and the victory. Fath. Fataha is to open, like to open enemy lines and to give victory. Fatiha, al-Fatiha, is the name for what? The opening chapter of the Quran, the opener, al-Fatiha. In the very first Medina book lesson, I don't know if you remember that, you'll find on the very first page a picture of a miftah. Miftah. I don't know if you can hear that, but fataha. Fataha, a tool for opening, which is a key. And so you begin to see how many different words all have a similar origin. And so that's what we want to be, that's what we want to, and so that's what we want to look at. We want to look at how do we get more familiar with that concept of root verbs. So what it's important to understand is that a verb like hafidha or fataha or sajada is made up of 3 letters. That's why we call them trilateral verbs. The word for verb in Arabic also consists of 3 letters, and that word is fi'l. The word fi'l that you can see below is the word for verb. The word fi'l itself consists of 3 letters, fa, ayn, and lam. Fa, as you can see, is the first letter. Ayn, as you can see, is the second letter. Lam, as you can see, is the third letter. Okay, so 1, 2, and 3. Now, why is that important to us? Because the first concept that we want you to grasp is how do we talk about root letters? When we talk about the concept of a trilateral root verb, when we talk about the changes that are made to that verb, or we talk about the different components of that verb and the changes that happen to that verb in order to make derivatives, we do so by referring to each individual root letter or radical by a certain term. When we say radical, we are talking about the concept of these 3 letters without being applied to anything specifically. In being radical, that means it can change. And so when we're talking about the concept of a 3-letter or trilateral root verb, if we're talking about any trilateral root, we refer to these individual letters, these individual 3 letters, as different radicals. Well, in Arabic, there is a specific name for the first radical or the first letter of the trilateral root. There's a specific name for the second radical or the third letter of the root verb. And there's a term for the third radical or the final letter of the 3-letter root verb. And it all goes back to the word fi'l, which means verb. So if you look at the word fi'l, and I ask you, what is the first letter of fi'l? What would you say? You would say fa. And interestingly enough, we can make a phonetical connection with that because fa begins with the same sound that first begins with, which is fa. And so fa for first. And so the very first letter of any 3-letter root verb, the very first radical, that very first letter, we refer to as the fa'ul fi'l. When we say fa'ul fi'l, we're basically saying the fa of the word fi'l, the fa of the verb. What is the fa of the verb? We'll come back down here to our example here, and you'll see that fa is the first letter. So when we talk about the first letter, that first radical of the 3-letter or the trilateral root verb, we refer to it as the fa'ul fi'l. And so if I were to ask you the verb hafidha, what is the fa'ul fi'l of hafidha? What is the first letter of hafidha? You would say it is ha. So we can say ha is the fa'ul fi'l. What do we mean by fa'ul fi'l? Fa'ul fi'l is the first letter because the word fi'l means verb. And the very first letter of the word fi'l is fa. And so fa is the first letter of the verb. Again, make that association, fa first. Now, if fa refers to the first letter of the verb, what do you think refers to the second letter of the verb? Well, let's go back to our word fi'l, which means verb. The first letter was fa. What is the second letter? Ain. So the second letter of a trilateral root verb is referred to as what? The ainul fi'l. Ainul fi'l means the second letter of the second radical of the verb. Why is it called the ainul fi'l? Because the second letter of the word fi'l, meaning verb, is ain. So we refer to the second letter or the second radical of any trilateral root verb without any changes, just the verb itself. We refer to that as the ainul fi'l. And so if we go back to the verb hafidha, which consists of 3 letters, it's a trilateral root verb. What is the ainul fi'l of hafidha? It's fa. Why is fa the ainul fi'l? Because fa is the second letter of that 3-letter root verb. Now, I'm going to let you take a wild guess here. What do you think we're going to call the third or the last letter of the trilateral root verb? Well, if you look at the word fi'l, meaning verb, the word fi'l has 3 letters. The first letter is fa. The second letter is ain. What's the last letter? Lam. The last letter is lam. And so the final radical, or the last letter of the trilateral 3-letter root verb, we refer to as what? The lamul fi'l. Why is it called the lamul fi'l? Because the word fi'l means verb, and the last letter of the word fi'l is lam. And so in the verb hafidha, what is the lamul fi'l? It's dha. Why is dha referred to as the lamul fi'l? Because it is the third letter of the verb hafidha. And lam is the third letter of the word fi'l. And so it is the lam, or the last letter of the word fi'l. And so what we want you to take away is that we refer to the first letter of any 3-letter verb. The first letter or the first radical we refer to as the fa'ul fi'l. The second letter we refer to as the ainul fi'l. The third letter we refer to as the lamul fi'l. We will be using that terminology in our class, inshallah. And hopefully, if you find that dense after 8 weeks together, inshallah, you'll know it like the back of your hand. So don't worry. So now we want to look at some more examples. So let's bring up our letters here. So we have fa, we have ain, and we have lam. All right. It's like a Jeopardy board here, isn't it? They're just coming up everywhere. All right. So we have several columns here. We have our fi'l, fa, ain, lam. We have fa'ul fi'l, which we said refers to the first letter. Ainul fi'l, which we said refers to the second letter. And lamul fi'l, which we said refers to the third letter. Here we have 4 verbs. What do all of these verbs have in common? I'll give you 3 guesses, and the first 2 don't count. They all consist of 3 letters. Absolutely. So, because they consist of 3 letters, then we can use our formula when we talk about them, which is we're going to use our discussion on them and on the letters that comprise them. We're going to use our terms fa'ul fi'l, ainul fi'l, and lamul fi'l. So we've done hafidha already. So we're going to come to our second word, alima. What is the fa'ul fi'l of alima? Remember, fa is the first letter. Fa first. The first letter of alima is ain. And so ain in alima, in the word alima, ain is the fa'ul fi'l. What is the second letter of the verb alima? The second letter is lam. And so in the verb alima, lam is the ainul fi'l. It's the ayn. Look at how they line up. Fa, fa. Ayn, ayn. What about meme? Where is meme positioned in the verb alima? It's last. Last, lam. Meme is the lamul fi'l. See how they line up? The meme is the lamul fi'l. So ayn is the fa'ul fi'l. Lam is the aynul fi'l. And meme is the lamul fi'l. In every verb? No. In the verb alima. What about fataha? What's the fa'ul fi'l in fataha? Fa. Fa is the fa'ul fi'l. That one's easy. Yeah. Because fa is the first letter in fataha. So fa is the fa'ul fi'l. First letter, first fa. What is the aynul fi'l in fataha? Ayn, look for that second letter. It's ta. Ta is the aynul fi'l. In alima? No. In fataha. What's the lamul fi'l in fataha? Lam is the last letter. Last lam. The last letter in fataha is ha. So ha is the lamul fi'l. Let's shake it up a bit. What is the aynul fi'l? What is the aynul fi'l? Aynul fi'l. What is the aynul fi'l of tabi'a? What is the aynul fi'l of tabi'a? It's the ba. The ba is the aynul fi'l. If you get confused, just look up here at the top. Here's your cheat sheet. All right. What is the lamul fi'l of tabi'a? Lam, last. What's the lamul fi'l? It's ayn. Ayn is the lamul fi'l. All right. In the $1 million question, what is the fa'ul fi'l of tabi'a? The fa'ul fi'l is the ta. Why? Because ta is the first letter. Fa first. Okay? So in this lesson, what we've looked at is the concept of the fa'ul fi'l, the aynul fi'l, and the lamul fi'l. That this is the language that we use when talking about verbs. When we talk about 3-letter root verbs, we refer to the letters of the root or the radicals. That's another term for them. We refer to them as the fa'ul fi'l, the aynul fi'l, and the lamul fi'l, respectively. Your teacher will or will not assign to you homework from your course book that ties into what we've talked about in this lesson. If you have any questions, make sure that you send them to Google Classroom, that you email your teacher, or you ask your teacher when you see him or her in class. We hope that the lesson has been clear for you. Feel free to watch it as many times as you need for those concepts to stick in. If you found it to be very dense, don't give up. It's new, and so it's going to take time for it to kind of sink in, but it's going to get there. Believe me. If you don't get it now, at the end of this 8-week course, inshallah, if you do your homework, stick to your lessons, inshallah, you'll get it and you won't have any problems. Thank you very much for tuning in. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.